Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're jumping into something pretty complex.
Yeah, it's a big one.
How U.S. manufacturing policies, especially tariffs, are really shaking things up for Apple.
Specifically, their huge supply chain, which, as we know, is heavily based in China.
Exactly. We've got this detailed analysis looking at Trump administration trade policies, Apple's setup.
Tariff rates, diversification efforts, expert views the whole picture.
Right. And our goal here is just to kind of cut through the noise and see what the core challenges are, what decisions Apple's really facing.
It really highlights that tension, doesn't it, between, say, a national agenda to bring industry back and the reality of a massive global company like Apple, whose whole model is built internationally.
Okay, so let's dive into those policies first. The Trump administration's push for U.S. manufacturing. Tariffs were key.
Absolutely. Tariffs on Chinese goods went up significantly. We're talking potential peaks of, 145% on some things?
Yeah, and that idea of reciprocal tariffs was floated too. Plus maybe baseline tariffs on almost everything coming in.
The idea basically was make foreign goods more expensive, especially from certain countries, to encourage making things here.
And they coupled that with incentives,
Yeah.
right? Like tax cuts.
Right, 100% bonus depreciation was a big one. And talk of potential subsidies down the line, less regulation.
Plus some targeted stuff like executive orders on pharmaceuticals and a focus on national security in the workforce.
Looking at the numbers from, say, May 2025 in the report, China had that baseline 10% tariff, but it could spike way higher.
But interesting that smartphones, laptops, TVs got temporary exemptions from the really high China rates.
Yeah, some temporary relief there. And it wasn't uniform, Canada, Mexico under USMCA, even India, Vietnam, different rates.
Reflecting different trade deals and, I guess, strategies.
Exactly.
So Apple, why is this such a big deal for them? Well, their reliance on China is just immense.
It really is. The report estimates maybe 90% of iPhones, plus loads of MacBooks, iPads. It's been their hub for years.
And why China? It started with cost, presumably.
Cost was definitely part of it initially, but over time, China built this incredible supply chain ecosystem.
You mean like all the suppliers and logistics packed together?
Precisely. Skilled workers, the ability to scale up production like that, and those key partnerships, Foxconn, Pegatron.
And it cuts both ways, right?
Yeah.
Apple makes a lot of money in China too.
Oh yeah, huge market for them. And they create a ton of jobs there. So China has leverage too, potentially with regulations if things get tense.
Okay, so you hit a company like that with these potential tariffs. What's the immediate impact?
Well, costs go up. The report mentioned an estimated $900 million hit in just one quarter. That's significant.
And that $900 million, that has to go somewhere. Likely means higher prices for us.
Very likely. Or lower profits for Apple, or a mix. But it's not just the direct cost. It disrupts everything.
How so?
Well, you're reconsidering suppliers, dealing with customs delays, maybe orders get canceled, contracts renegotiated. It's messy.
Plus, the report mentions that threat of China maybe restricting rare earth exports. That sounds serious.
Adds another layer of risk, definitely. These are crucial materials for electronics.
And in the market, if Apple's prices go up, but say Samsung's don't as much because they're less reliant on China,
that's a huge competitive risk. Apple could lose market share.
Which naturally pushes them to look elsewhere. Let's talk diversification. India comes up a lot.
Yes, India is a major focus, aiming to seriously increase iPhone production there, maybe even for the U.S. market eventually.
And Vietnam, too, for iPads, MacBooks.
Vietnam's becoming a really important hub, yeah. Apple Watches, AirPods, too. The report calls it a leading supplier hub in Southeast Asia now. Lots of investment.
Are there other places mentioned?
Brazil, South Korea, Indonesia, Thailand are possibilities. Even some talk about appliance manufacturing back in the U.S. Depends on tariffs, labor, infrastructure.
But moving isn't simple. Replicating China's efficiency. That sounds incredibly hard.
It really is. That dense network of specialized suppliers, the whole system. You can't just copy-paste it overnight.
The report notes that even iPhones assembled in India often still use a lot of Chinese parts.
Exactly. It's a complex web. And building up the needed infrastructure, training the workforce elsewhere, that takes time. Serious money.
And maybe differences in work culture, efficiency too.
All potential factors. Plus, these new places aren't risk-free either. India and Vietnam have faced U.S. tariffs too, remember?
Right. And different countries mean different rules, more complexity. Okay, so let's bring it back to us, the consumers. If Apple's costs rise, prices likely go up. How much are we talking?
Estimates really vary. Some extreme scenarios and analyses suggested prices could even potentially double, but that's likely worst case. It affects accessories, services too.
So Apple has options, right? Absorb costs, raise prices.
They could try differential pricing in different regions, push hard negotiating with suppliers. It's a strategic balancing act.
How might we react? Higher prices could mean fewer sales, surely.
Yeah, potential demand reduction is a real concern. Maybe you see a short-term rush to buy before prices jump, but it could hit lower-income consumers hardest.
What are the analysts saying? Financial types.
Generally expecting a hit to earnings, worries about long-term demand, although some think Apple might negotiate long-term tariff exemptions. Stock price reflects that uncertainty.
And tech industry folks.
They see global electronics manufacturing shifting, but agree a rapid move out of China is just not feasible short-term. Maybe more automation, investment elsewhere.
And economists. The big picture.
Often warn that broad tariffs mean higher prices for everyone, potentially slower economic growth. Big debate. Protect domestic industry versus rising costs and retaliation.
Feels like we've seen versions of this before. Past trade wars.
Often caused harm on both sides, slowed growth. The recent U.S.-China trade friction had costs for the U.S., limited success.
And specifically in tech, that U.S.-China rivalry, like with Huawei, shows how policies can really disrupt companies.
Yeah, concerns over IP, tech transfer, restrictions. It's a related dynamic.
Okay, so wrapping this up, the key takeaway seems to be Apple is walking this tightrope. U.S. policy pulling one way, their deep China ties pulling another.
It really underscores how complex these global supply chains are and how government actions can send massive ripples through them.
And the decisions Apple makes now, where they build things, how they do it, that directly affects the price you pay, maybe even the features you get.
Absolutely. Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, the listener. What would a truly made-in-America iPhone actually look like?
Not just the price tag, which would likely be high.
But think about innovation, too.
Yeah.
The speed of getting new tech to market. Are there hidden costs, maybe hidden benefits to shifting everything? Something to mull over.